Welcome to the Communicating Capital podcast, where finance and communication get a fresh perspective. Hosted by a dynamic team of women in the industry, we're here to redefine the conversation with candid, no-nonsense interviews featuring top execs, communication experts, and industry leaders. With a focus on clarity and real-world impact, we make the complex world of finance digestible and relatable. So whether you're just getting started, or you're interested in our world, or you're an expert, we're here to help you navigate the space in new and exciting ways. Today, joining us from New York City is Seth Farbman. He's a veteran entrepreneur and an expert in servicing both private and publicly traded companies. Seth has founded and led multiple successful companies, including Vintage Filings, V Corp Services, VCheck Global, and so many more. He currently serves as the chairman and founder of Vstock and Share Media. His journey from a securities attorney, of all things, to a pioneering entrepreneur offers invaluable insights into the world of business, innovation, and client service. Seth, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of yours and the company, and so it's an honor to be here.
So Seth, you've built such an impressive career spanning so many different industries, from securities law to entrepreneurship. Can you start by telling us a little bit about your journey? What motivated you to transition from a securities attorney, of all things, to founding your own companies?
Yeah, I guess I started off as a securities attorney. I couldn't hack the billable hours, and I decided that, and anybody who is an attorney of any sort may have experienced this. When I was first starting out of law school, and I was working at a small firm in the city, they did say to me that I can bring in new business, and I was like, oh, okay, if I can make an extra buck, I'll give it a try, and I was able to hustle it a little bit. But at some point, I was like, one second, I'm bringing in the business, I'm responsible for the business, I have to actually do the work, I have to collect on it, and you're giving me 2%. Meaning, to an extent, I was running my own little firm, so I guess I was young enough and naive enough to say, why don't I just start my own firm? So I started Seth Farbman PC, a small securities firm out of my basement, and one thing led to another. I ended up working as an SEC Edgar filing company. We launched a company called Vintage Filings. Since I was writing the material for my public companies anyway as an attorney, I said, hey, why don't I just offer to do the filings for you at half price? That launched a 25-year journey in servicing public companies, not as a lawyer. For those that are listening that are either starting a company or thinking of starting a company, I spent the first, 8-9 months sleeping on the couch in my basement because we had to be perceived as 24/7. Basically had pizza, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Couldn't leave my office. Wanted to quit pretty much every day. But Vintage Filings, which was that first company, we ended up growing to about 4,000 companies within the first 5 years, and sold our first company to PR Newswire. So that was sort of the springboard for everything to come.
You've worked with over 3,000 publicly traded companies, helping them navigate the complexities of compliance in the IPO and public arena. How do you approach service in such a high-stakes environment?
I think that, the core is really the same, whether you're servicing public companies as a stock transfer agent, as a social media company, as a marketing company, as a background check company, anything that I've touched, at the end of the day, I still look at it as it's a service.
Right.
And so I heard this great presentation from Tony Hsieh, who was the founder of Zappos, a small little $1 billion shoe company. He said two things. He said, and it's stuck with me for literally 15 years since I heard it. He was presenting actually at the Inc. 5000 conference, and thank God at the time, I think VCheck was nominated as one of the top 500 fastest growing companies. So we were there. It was exciting. So here are the two things that he said. Number one, he said, you always have to have the wow factor. Mm-hmm. So when somebody would order shoes online, he would, the automated response was, okay, you'll get your delivery within, 48 to 72 hours. But really, they sent it out after 24 hours. So the customer came out of their house the next morning, found the package. They're like, wow, this is even better than I expected. So I'm always trying to think about what's the wow factor, whatever the business is. And number two, he spoke about the definition of happiness, that different people have a definition of happiness. So if you're pitching your goods to a CEO, his definition of happiness might be, how do I get more revenue? A CFO might be, how do I save money? general counsel is? How do I stay compliant? So you always have to think about what's the definition of happiness for your customer, public or private. And that's really, what we've tried to navigate and focus on how we can bring value to our customers.
Definitely make a good point. And Seth, we all know you wear many hats. You're serving as the chairman of Vstock Transfer. You're leading Share Media. I see you talking to so many different amazing professionals. Could you walk us through your day-to-day responsibilities and how you balance these roles?
Day to day, no day is the same, as I'm sure you experience. My day-to-day definitely starts with juggling my 7 kids. Thank God. That's definitely a big part of, well, that's why we do what we do, right? I mean, we work hard for our family and for ourselves. My role has actually changed quite significantly depending on the company that I'm active in. Meaning at the beginning, let's just say with Vintage Filings, my awesome partner, Shai Stern, he's the born salesman. I'm like Mr. Antisocial, stand in the corner, pretend to be on my phone, leave me alone.
Right.
He was the born sales guy that's like up at 4 a.m. staring at the ceiling saying, okay, when can I cold call? When can I reach out to the next customer? And so for between 5 and 8 years, those were our roles, where I was more operations and compliance. And over the years, depending on the venture, to where we are now, either with Share Media or with Vstock, my role is nothing to do with operations, nothing to do with compliance. It's strictly, I don't want to say rainmaker, but, trying to cultivate relationships and bring in new business. And so I'm really focused on meeting new people, trying to be innovative, trying to see what about the industry lends itself to new opportunities. And so I guess to answer your question directly, no day is really planned out. It depends what's thrown at me, depending on conferences that we go to and events, whether it's NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, bell ringings. Every day is exciting.
So what are some key challenges that companies would face when they're preparing for an IPO, or if they're interacting with shareholders, or even managing compliance? And how do you help them?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are various reasons why people will go public. I made up an acronym at one point. I think it was CAVE. C is they want to go public because they want to use their stock as currency. They want to potentially do acquisitions. V was valuations. As a public company, they certainly have higher valuations. And E was to be able to hire employees using their stock. And so I guess E could also be an exit strategy. But those are the reasons that companies want to go public. And very often, people are deciding, just to focus on the transfer agent side where I'm more exposed, they say, well, when do I start a transfer agent? When do I start with the lawyer? When do I start with the auditor? When do I start with that listing discussion with NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange or the OTC? From my perspective, very often the times that you need to start to get things together is, number one, if your Excel sheet is becoming unmanageable, right? You raise money a little bit. The CFO is ready to tear his hair out because he's got like 50, 60 names on his shareholder list. That's time to get a transfer agent and start thinking about acting as if you're a public company. And the other time is if you really are about to start presenting on a roadshow to investors, to funds, to different banks. You don't want them thinking that you're printing stock out of your basement someplace. You want to demonstrate that you've got all your ducks in a row and you're really serious about running your business and taking it to the next level as a national, on a national exchange. So those are the times that we start to have those discussions with companies that are exploring, becoming public.
So going to pivot back to LinkedIn, because I know that that's something that is so top of mind right now for you and so many of your executives. You're passionate about LinkedIn. You talk about it all the time. And I know that it's important. So I would love to hear in your own voice for our listeners, how important is personal branding in today's business world? And what tips would you offer for building a strong LinkedIn presence?
Yeah, it's funny. Yesterday, I was actually just speaking with a gentleman. I won't name his name, but he had the second largest PR firm in the country at one point, many, many years ago, and he sold it. And we were talking about LinkedIn, and I was so it was so validating to hear his take on it. He said that in today's world, you really have to have a personal brand together with the corporate brand. And at the end of the day, people want to do business with people. And too often, and I'm very passionate about it, but I think that too often when companies go public, they think, okay, well, now I'm public. I'll put out a press release. I hope somebody reads it and have a nice day. And that's so far from the truth. I'm sure you can tell war stories where people have to have their name, their company, their mission, what they do in print, whether it's magazines or different publications or different blogs. But they also have to show their true self. They have to be authentic. They have to have a standout LinkedIn profile, because we live in a world where if you and I met for the first time today, I would just Google your name, and we don't have patience anymore. I'm not going to go to the website, about us, who we are. I'm already bored. I'm just going to Google your name. The first thing that's going to come up is your LinkedIn profile, and you've got like 7 seconds to make that impression. I definitely encourage people to work on it or have somebody work on connections, content, visibility, branding, things like that. I think it'll go a long way.
Seth, it's been an absolute pleasure hearing your story and insights today. So before we wrap up, can you share any advice or guidance for either entrepreneurs looking to launch a company or CEOs that might be looking to raise additional capital or even go public?
For companies looking to go public, I get that question from time to time, like, hey, Seth, you've got companies, why don't you go public? My answer is usually I know better, but no, I'm kidding. I encourage everybody to go public. As we said before, it means different things for different people depending on what their goals and their objectives are, whether it's with capital or acquisitions. And I think at the end of the day, the good news is that there are a lot of different avenues to explore, right? In today's environment, there are companies that raise capital or go public through Reg A, through a direct listing, which is relatively new, through SPAC. So, I just encourage everybody to surround yourself with the right team of people, advisors, lawyers, auditors, bankers, transfer agents, of course, and explore which of those many options available to you will match up best with the goal that you're trying to achieve.
For our listeners who want to learn more about Seth's work or connect with him directly, be sure to check out the links in our show notes. Until next time, thank you for tuning in to Communicating Capital.